All right. In Just hit mute for me. Let me get the good intro going. In
Gotcha.
three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm joined this week by the Libra icon. What's going on, Dwayne?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good to be back as always for another week. Let's get it.
All right, man. Just to let everybody know, you can find Know the Score on CSPN.us. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play. We can also be found through any app for iPhone or Android used to download and play podcasts. So, Dwayne, we'll get right into it. Last weekend, NFL Championship Sunday. We'll start off in Foxborough as Tom Brady leads the Patriots back from 10 points down in the fourth quarter to defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars 24-20. Game effort by the Jaguars came down to they just ran out of points and ran out of steam in the fourth quarter, let Brady get too many chances with the football. And Brady cashed in with 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and got the Patriots over the hump. So they're advancing to their eighth Super Bowl in 16 years for Tom Brady. So half of his career he's played in the Super Bowl. That's quite amazing. So Dwayne, your thoughts on Jacksonville coming up short and Belichick and Brady pulling out another one?
Well, it was pretty much what we expected. The Jaguars were very game, but you gotta get it up for number 12. He did what he does best, and it was a methodical comeback. It was a methodical game, and you just never count out New England, no matter what the odds are. Pretty much, they always seem to find a way to get the job done. And their mantra, one of their mantras is do your job, and everybody did their job, especially in the second half. And everything the Jaguars were doing in the first 3.5 quarters of the game, it just ended up backfiring on them. And like you said, they ran out of steam. And this is a young team that just needs to close out the big game against a very game team. They know how to close out games. Blake Bortles, it seemed like the bigger the stage, the better he played. And you can't put that on him. You can't put that on the defense, really. It was just the better team showed up in the end and won, and that was the New England Patriots. So, they do it again. Belichick and Brady, their eighth Super Bowl, 10th Super Bowl overall. And, they have a chance to tie Pittsburgh for the most Super Bowl wins all time.
Another thing that was significant about this win is Brady did this without Gronk. Gronk got knocked out by Barry Church in the first half. So a lot of this comeback was done without him. It looked to me that he got better without Gronk because, as we talked about in the preview, Jacksonville was kind of double covering Gronk and kind of going one up with everybody else. They even put Jalen Ramsey on him a couple of times early in the first quarter, first half. And it resulted in a sack by Dante Fowler that Tony Romo pointed out nice, where Brady thought he was going to get one coverage, and then he looks at Gronk and he finds out, oh no, it's double coverage. And Fowler gets in for a sack. So with Gronk getting knocked out, it kind of made Brady have to use all of his guys, and I think that kind of changed up Jacksonville the way that they also changed their coverage. They never changed their coverage. Instead of just going man to man and saying these guys can't beat us, they stayed in their defense, and Brady eventually picked them apart because you have to keep scoring the ball or at least getting first downs if you get the lead against New England. You can't just get to a certain point where you're just going to be like, oh, I'm going to rely on my defense, because Brady will eventually get to you. And that's what exactly happened. No matter how good your passing defense is, if you give Brady 5 chances, 6 chances with the ball in one quarter, he's going to put two of them in the end zone. And that just befell Jacksonville this time. But they'll be back. They've got some questions to answer at quarterback. If they, bring Bortles back, if they try to go after somebody, that's an upgrade in most people's minds. They definitely have all the ingredients right now, except for a quarterback, to make a serious run at the Super Bowl. So I think a lot of people gained a lot of respect and gained a newfound fear for Jacksonville and what they could be if they get, an upgraded quarterback.
Yeah, and also to say this, Bortles was much maligned most of the season, but we also got to realize he did this without most of his top two receivers all season long. I mean, Allen Hurns was back, but he wasn't the Allen Hurns we saw last year or at the first part of the season. He didn't have Allen Robinson at all. And like I said, the bigger the stage, the better he got. But it is going to be interesting to see if they do an upgrade, like you said. But I don't think they should, to be honest. I think, he proved as a bigger the stage came along with, secondary guys and your veteran tight end and Mercedes Lewis. And they actually were pretty reliable on offense. So you just got to really tip your cap to Bortles for what he did with what he had. And, even though he's much maligned, he did what he had to do with what he had. So I give him credit for that.
All right. So we'll shift the scene over to Philadelphia as the Eagles dismantled the Vikings 38-7 behind the career day for Nick Foles. He was out of his mind. They, unleashed the chains on him, basically. He'd kind of been dinking and dunking the past few weeks, completing passes, but not really pushing the ball down the field. Well, that was totally different in this game. They really attacked the Vikings. They didn't show him a lot of respect and a lot of fear, and 38-7 resulted. The game really changed on a pick six by Case Keenum that Patrick Robinson returned like 50 yards for a touchdown, weaving across the field. From that moment on, it seemed like Philly gained momentum, and it didn't stop until the game ended. The Vikings took the first kickoff, went right down the field, 7-0, got a stop. And then, they were, like I said, had like 2 plays into the drive, and then Case Keenum throws his pick six. And then from then on, the Vikings just never recovered. Nick Foles and the deep ball just jumped on them. So, Dwayne, I don't think we call this outburst from Nick Foles and Philly.
I think a lot of people didn't see this coming, and I didn't see this coming. And, because we always say defense, we rely on the defense, and the defense that showed up was the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was not something we expected. I thought the Vikings would pull us off, bring it home, but the Philadelphia Eagles, hats off to them. They destroyed Minnesota, and I thought, Nick Foles was going to be, dismantled in this one, but he had one heck of a game. Every pass that he made was on point. The defense was crisp. The defense had plenty of sacks, and they rattled Case Keenum, and it was one of those things where you're kind of auditioning to be the quarterback of the team in the future, or are you going to go back to Sam Bradford, or are you going to go back to Teddy Bridgewater? But I think one bad game doesn't really define the season that Minnesota had. It's going to leave a bitter taste in their mouth. They were one game away from going back home, but now they got to see the team that destroyed them in their own building. So that's kind of a awkward kind of thing there. So, but with that being said, the Eagles, their defense flew all over the field. And, this is a team that has been decimated by injuries all over the place, not just with Carson Wentz, but with Jason Peters and numerous other players. And this team just finds a way to keep on going. It's kind of like the Patriots, really, if you really look at it. It's the next man up. They did it without Gronk, and the Eagles are doing this without their top players, and they just put people in, and everybody gets a formation and they start winning.
Yeah, the Vikings offense really didn't do them any favors. They kept stalling out. They had they had one long drive there that could have got them back in the game. They didn't kick the field goal, went for it on fourth down. They didn't convert. And that was kind of really the last time that the game was actually really close. They just couldn't sustain anything. It looked like early on that, Murray and McKinnon were going to really do the Eagles in. They were having a hard time stopping Murray from running outside, and then McKinnon was catching balls out of the backfield on the outside. But once the deficit got, large, and it became a drop back game, the Phillies defense just really keyed in on Case Keenum, harassed him a lot, and shut down that Vikings offense. So, shout out to the Eagles. They've been playing up this underdog thing since the playoffs started, and they've continued it right to the Super Bowl, where again, they will be the underdog. So just a reminder, if this is Know the Score, I'm your host, Don Delarente. I'm joined by my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne, and we can be found right here every week on CSPN.us. So we'll get into our second topic involving the NFL, the coaching carousel. As more teams get eliminated from the playoffs, we get more offensive and defensive coordinators and coaches on teams getting selected to be head coaches of other teams. So I'll run down a quick list, and then Dwayne, you kind of, mention some that stand out to you. We have Pat Shurmur, the former Vikings offensive coordinator. He was named coach of the Giants. Pat Patricia, the Patriots defensive coordinator, has been linked to the Detroit Lions. Matt Nagy, the former Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator, is the new Chicago Bears head coach. Mike Vrabel, as we talked about last week, got named to be the Titans head coach. Josh McDaniels is rumored to be the Colts next head coach. And Steve Wilks, the former Panthers defensive coordinator, has been named the Arizona Cardinals next head coach. So, Dwayne, kind of, which one of those hiring stands out to you, and some intriguing coach and quarterback matchups here?
Well, the Pat Shurmur one stood out because, it's kind of been, what are you going to do with Eli Manning? And they already said that Eli is the guy. So kind of wonder, do you bring in somebody else? Do you draft high and get a quarterback, or do you go with running back like Saquon Barkley to help that running game out with that number 2 pick? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Giants there. That stood out to me when I first looked at the list. And Mike Vrabel, that was a surprise hire. I thought the Titans would make a play for Josh McDaniels, but I think he's locked down with the Colts when the Patriots season ends on Sunday. Or not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday. And, of course, Matt Patricia, we kind of already knew he was going to be tabbed for the Lions job after the Patriots season ends as well. But the Mike Vrabel hiring was a surprise, especially considering the Texas defense was really 32nd, but at the same time they didn't have J.J. Watt, they didn't have Whitney Mercilus, they had a lot of injuries on the defensive front. But you also got to wonder, Romeo Crennel, who's also got Patriot ties as well, got demoted after he had the number 1 defense, and Mike Vrabel, who had the 32nd ranked defense, gets the job. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in Houston, and then also who's going to fill up the staff. It's really going to be who's going to bring in as the offensive coordinator, because that was the whole reasoning for Mike Mularkey getting fired in Tennessee, because he didn't want to get rid of Terry Robisky, but the management did. So that pretty much stood out. And, Steve Wilks, great hire for the Cardinals. I hate to see him leave Carolina, but it's always good to see, people from your team, getting the top head coaching jobs elsewhere. And the Panthers already got their defensive coordinator in place. Eric Washington was the linebackers coach. He's already locked in as a replacement for Steve Wilks. So Those were the things that stood out to me at the end of this whole carousel.
All right, let me bring you in one more thing about the Panthers. They fired their offensive coordinator and their quarterbacks coach as well. So they're, I guess, going away from the Mike Shula, I guess, run heavy cam scheme to the North Turner. Ernie Zampese, Eric Coryell, power running game, big shot passing game offense. Do you think this is going to work?
Well, North Turner is a brilliant offense coordinator, and it's going to be interesting for him because he's got a big quarterback who can run the ball, and I think he does want to make. I think he's going to make Cam more of a passer, and he's going to use McCaffrey and more of a slot receiver more than a between the backs kind of guy. So you got to look at who's going to be backing up Jonathan Stewart if you bring Jonathan Stewart back. By the way, who's going to be backing him up at the running back spot? I like the hire because I do know that as long as North Turner is in the coordinator position, the teams do brilliantly. It's just when he becomes the head coach, that's where you got to question everything. But I think it's going to be an interesting look. It's just going to see how mini camps and OTAs and how they gel in training camp. That's really going to be what's going to determine how the season in 2018 is going to go. I'm looking forward to it as a fan, and I think it can work. You know, Ron Rivera knows North Turner. He was North Turner's defensive coordinator when they were in San Diego, and so it's kind of like a role reversal. I think they will be okay. I really do.
Didn't North Wasn't he the offensive coordinator when the Vikings had Dante Culpepper or the Dolphins had Dante Culpepper? Didn't he coach him for like a season or two?
I want to say he did. I want to say he did,
Yeah, so
and that that kind of does remind you of that situation with Dante Culpepper. Um, and so this was one of those things where I think it's going to be another big quarterback who will be able to run and throw. Yeah, but the Panthers also need to draft a. They also need to draft a wide receiver because they don't have one. Devin Funches is a good wide receiver, but he's not, a wide receiver where this can be like the guy. Um, and looking at North Turner's career here, and he's been in Dallas, Washington, Oakland, San Francisco. I'm trying to see where he was a coordinator. And
I thought he was a
oh,
coordinator.
Miami. It was Miami in 0203.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I thought it was either Miami or Minnesota, but I remember him coaching Dante Culpepper. So that would be a good comparison to kind of see what Culpepper's stats were when Norv was coaching him, because I think, accuracy wise, Culpepper and Cam kind of are similar. The deeper the passes are, the better they seem to be. So
Right.
and North Turner has a deeper passing game than the Panthers had previously employed as far as basic routes and things. So, yeah, I think that maybe this could work to his strengths where, he could just rip the ball through the windows at 15, 17 yards away from him and not have to worry about the touch. Just can his receivers hold on to it?
Exactly. And I think, you got Greg Olson, he'll be back and healthy. And then if they draft a receiver like Calvin Ridley, maybe from Alabama, who was on some mock drafts already, if you draft him, you might be in pretty good shape.
All right. So we're going to move on from the NFL and we're going to get into some NBA headlines. Unfortunately, to start off the week, we had a firing as Jason Kidd became the latest casualty of this NBA season, as he was fired as the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks due to his underachieving season. And it seems like he had some issues with some players and some upper management folks in the Bucks. It's kind of the same thing that played out with the Nets as well. So it seems like, Jason Kidd has a little issue working with his fellow employers. But the Bucks are currently the A seed, and right now they'll probably be the most attractive job in the NBA once the offseason does start next year and the coaching search officially begins. They're going to ride it out with one of their assistants being an interim coach, see if they can make a run in playoffs, hold their position. So Dwayne kind of their star player wasn't happy with this. So that's always an issue when you do have a coaching change. You have a guy that's in a market like Milwaukee that when he comes up for free agency is going to take all they can to keep him there. So, how do you see this playing out for Milwaukee, and who would you think would be a good fit when they start their coaching search?
Yeah, that's a good question on the last one. I'll answer the first one first. I think, with it's does it is pretty bad for Giannis Antetokounmpo because he did become a rising star under Kid, but I also think with Jason Kidd's issues, mainly with Jabari Parker, I don't think he was really feeling Jabari Parker ever since they got there. Also, the power that Kid was supposed to have had, he never received or he lost it when the GM got hired. So I think it's one of those things where it was not a fun time for Jason, and also being it, he wasn't in the glitz and glamour of New York with the Nets. He wasn't. He was pretty much hired because the one of the co-owners of the Bucks was his good friend, and now, even though now the owners kind of made him less of an untouchable and allowed the GM to make any kind of decision, including coaching changes, they allowed him to pull the trigger on that change. So now it's kind of like who you bring in. I think it's going to be a good audition for their assistant right now. I want to say it will be a kind of a interesting take to see if the Bucks can rise from that eighth spot because this is a good team, and if you really look at it, they still have a shot at the Central with the Cleveland Cavaliers still struggling. So it's always interesting to see what is going to happen. How do you respond to the coaching change? Joe Prunty has a lot of work to do. And then also, who can you bring in if Prunty doesn't become the head coach for the rest of the season? It's going to be somebody you got to bring in like a player's coach. I don't know. I mean, you could say a guy like David Fizdale. You could say somebody like I would say Scott Skiles, but I think Scott Skiles still have a job right now, so he may not. But you could look at somebody on the other team on a team that's already um, on the bench right now. I don't know who would be. I think Skiles is the name that pops out to mind, but he did coach the Bucks already. But you never know. You can always bring people back for a second stint, and just one of those things you have to wait and see for.
All right. And some unfortunate news, Boogie Cousins will be out for the rest of the season after he ruptured his Achilles on Friday night after he posted a triple-double. This happened early in the fourth quarter. Very unfortunate. Boogie was named to his fifth All-Star team. He was the starter this year. And, he was, one of the better players in the league, posting double-doubles. Him and Anthony Davis were really starting to click. getting this Twin Towers thing working. The Pelicans blew out the Rockets in this game. Anthony Davis had a big game as well. They've got some better guard play. Pelicans definitely up and coming in the West, and now they've got this big blow dealt to them. So this is going to change the dynamics of their team greatly, as now Anthony Davis is going to get that primary focus back on him when teams come in to match up against them. So talk about the unfortunate injury for Boogie, and then kind of the ripple effect this is going to have on the Pelicans, who are starting to play some of their best basketball.
It really does. It's really unfortunate. I was shocked as much as anybody else when this happened, because this was a guy who's had such a bad reputation and is not even warranted. And he's been doing everything to get to the playoffs for the first time in his career. There's a contract year on top of that. He's done everything the right way, and everything was starting to gel between, like you said, him and Anthony Davis, and then this injury occurs, and it's a devastating blow for him. It's a devastating blow for the team, and the Pelicans were really one of the. They really started coming the ticket in town. I mean, especially with the Saints in the off season, this team was really starting to get it together and pull it together. Now you gotta find somebody who's going to, elevate their game a little bit more now, with Anthony Davis now being the focal point again. So teams are gonna converge down on him. So who's going to pick it up? Is it going to be Holiday? Is it going to be somebody? Because it's just really this is really something you have to. It's not easy replacing a double machine, a superstar, and a guy who's just been, quiet in terms of just trying to get everything, together, and trying to show that, hey, he can hold it down. He can be one of the guys who just, plays the game of basketball, doesn't make any waves in the news, he's just wanting to win, and that's all you want from somebody. He just wants to win. He's in a winning environment, and this happens. So get well, DeMarcus. Get well, Boogie. Hopefully, you get another 1-year deal, and you can maximize that. Or who knows? Maybe the Pelicans will sign an extension, or you get a big contract elsewhere. But it just really is unfortunate that you had to go through this already.
The thing about this particular injury, the Achilles for a basketball player, is it's pretty much a career-altering, and in most cases, a career-ending injury. It's basically the injury that ended Kobe's career. It's the injury that ended Dominique Wilkins' career. It's the injury that ended Isaiah Thomas's career. It's really the injury, and he had it as a young person, that ended Christian Laettner's NBA career for all intents and purposes. So everybody who gets this particular injury, they are never the same. A couple of those guys were older off in their career, like Isaiah and Dominique especially. But even for Christian Laettner, I know in his documentary, he said, they asked him why he wasn't an effective, NBA player, and he said that he never could recover from blowing his Achilles out, is he just never had the same explosiveness, and you're just so afraid that when you push off it's gonna go again, and he just said he just never could get over it. So hopefully Boogie can come back strong. He's a below the rim player for all intents and purposes, so maybe it'll be a little bit better in the future for him going forward. But yeah, this is a really tough injury for a basketball player to recover from. Unfortunately, Dwayne, as we tried to talk them into last week on our show, they did not hold the selections of the all-star teams between Steph and LeBron on television. It was done, I guess, by conference call. on I think it was last Thursday.
And it sucks.
So we just kind of got a generic press release that the teams were selected, and here are the lineups as follows. So Team LeBron consists of Boogie Cousins, who will now be replaced by Paul George, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, LaMarcus Aldridge, Bradley Beal, Kevin Love, Victor Oladipo, Christoph Porzingis, John Wall, and Russell Westbrook. So, Dwayne, what do you think about the Team LeBron?
I like Team LeBron. I think it was smart for him to get Kevin Durant, get him away from, Stephen Curry. I like the fact he chose Kyrie Irving. Kevin Love as well. Russell Westbrook and KD are reunited as teammates for a night. And it's going to be pretty interesting. I think everybody on you look at the team on paper is pretty stacked, and I really do like Team LeBron a lot.
All right. So we'll move over to Team Steph, where he has Giannis Antetokounmpo, DeMar DeRozan, Joel Embiid, James Harden, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Al Horford, Damian Lillard, Kyle Lowry, Klay Thompson, and Carl Anthony Towns. So, what are your thoughts on Team Steph?
Team Steph has a lot of hardworking players, so to speak. I think LeBron went the superstar route. I think Steph went with guys that play basketball, work hard. I mean, Draymond, Carl Anthony Towns, a few other players on the team that, when you look at the names, you're like, okay, they put the numbers in and they work pretty hard. So that's one thing that stood out to me. It's kind of like, well, the Flash, it's kind of like the Flash, the flashy, attractive names versus the names that are known, but, they just put their nose more to the ground. You know them more as like working hard versus just like star power names themselves.
All right. Now, we can't go an episode without talking about As the Cavs Turn. So, apparently, there was a team meeting where Kevin Love seemed to be the focus this week, as there were some questions to whether he was legitimately ill when he removed himself from the basketball game last week. Isaiah Thomas apparently was the one to call out Kevin Love in this instance, and it seems like he was getting that hot potatoing that blame off of him, as the week before everybody was blaming IT and his poor defense for the reason that the Cavs were struggling. So as the Cavs turns this week also saw Dwayne Wade have to miss a game due to personal issues and family reasons. So Dwayne, what do you think about this week's episode? Isaiah Thomas, of all people, going after Kevin Love, for removing himself, like, hey, you just got here, my friend. You haven't done anything to even warrant you speaking up in a meeting, maybe of this extent. So what's going on with the Cavs?
I don't know. It seems like a lot of drama in and out the organization. It's one of those things where, the new guy trying to make the impact and probably should just stay in line and just kind of, observe versus speak out. I know you want to make a difference, but Kevin Love has been there longer. I'm sure he knows what's going on. And it's one of those things where, everybody on this organization just needs to play basketball and not worry about what the other guys doing on their team. Like, just bring it together. It is January, but it's getting closer now to March. So we need to see what this team is going to do and what this team is made of in the next couple months because time is ticking. We're getting towards the All Star break, we're getting towards the trade deadline, we're getting towards a lot of things right now. And if these guys don't get it together, you know, what's going to happen when the playoffs come around? Are we going to see a monumental first round exit of LeBron James, which has never happened? Or are they going to find a way to get it together, get it to the conference finals and or the Eastern Conference Finals? And if you really look at it too, the Cavs are only 2.5 games ahead of the Central on the Indiana Pacers and 3 ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's one of those things where you got teams in this division and the conference right now who are like right there. So they really need to get to the grind and find a way to, leapfrog Toronto and maybe Boston.
All right, we'll finish up on some actual on-court stuff. As in the last week, the Golden State Warriors had 2 marquee matchups as they went against the Houston Rockets last weekend, last Saturday night. And then this Saturday night, they went against the Boston Celtics. They went 1-1 as they lost to the Rockets on the road. And then they came back last night after a little slow start. And the second half, they had a brilliant performance from Steph. He had like 49 points, I think, last night against Boston. Kyrie had like 35, 37, somewhere around there. So they had a nice little duel going back and forth. So basically, we got to see the Warriors up against probably if the Cavs are their biggest threat, the next 2 biggest threats, which are Houston in the West and then Boston coming out of the East if they have a chance to face them in the finals. What were your takeaways about what you saw from these 2 contenders against the Warriors head to head?
I like the way the Warriors came out, this weekend. They pretty much showed that against Boston that this could be a very, very entertaining NBA Finals. I think this is the team that will still come out the West after a 7-game fight with the Rockets. I think Golden State Houston will go the distance, and then they'll find a way to squeak out a series win over the Celtics in the finals. But this was a good series, and the Celtics have had the Warriors number, but keep in mind it was also with a whole different team practically, and so the Rockets show that they can hang with the Warriors. I want to see more of that. I really would like to see 7 games of that. So if Houston can find a way to take out Golden State, that would be something pretty special. But we also have to see if the Celtics can they also not only get more out of everybody else when Kyrie's not playing or if Kyrie's on the bench, who's going to be that guy to score? I know Hayward was going to be that guy before he got hurt, but Al Horford, who is an all-star, he's got to do more in that scoring department. Rozier, a lot of guys on that team will need to pick up some slack. So it's going to be interesting. I think the Celtics are the best team in the East. I think they have a chance to go into the NBA Finals, and I think they'll have a nice matchup with Golden State.
Okay. At this time, just want to remind you that this episode of Know the Score is brought to you by Amazon. So please go to www.cspn.us, click on the banner that says keep the podcast free. Once you click on that, scroll down to click on Amazon. Buy that Valentine's Day gift, that birthday gift, or even that, big screen TV you need for the Super Bowl coming up. Find anything you need in the world on Amazon. And if you go through cspn.us, you help keep all the podcasts here on the network free each and every week. So Amazon.com through CSPN.us, do it today. Dwayne, we're going to wrap up this episode and we're going to talk about the Major League announcing their newest crop of Hall of Famers. So, on his first time, Chipper Jones and Jim Thome both received first ballot Hall of Fame nominations. Rounding out the class are Vladimir Guerrero and Trevor Hoffman. So I heard some groaning, I guess, over Jim Thome. So sound off.
Well, it wasn't towards Jim Thome. It was more towards Chipper Jones. As a Mets fan, Chipper Jones.
Oh, well, okay. There's bias there.
Yeah. And Chipper Jones was always like every single time he found a way to torture the Mets. And, you know, he even ended up naming his child Shea after Shea Stadium because that's where he was at his best on the road at Shea Stadium. So, yeah, so no. On a good note, this is well deserved. He was the first ballot Hall of Famer. You know, Mets fandom aside, he was definitely one of the best in his prime, and spending all his time in Atlanta as a Brave, and much respect to him. I definitely do appreciate his game and his contributions. Did it the right way, and it's well deserved. Now, Jim Thome, I was always a fan of Jim Thome's, even after he went to the Philadelphia Phillies for a few seasons. But this is a guy who knew how to just hit the baseball, and it was always fun to watch, especially during those Cleveland years when the Indians were a fixture in the postseason, when they played the Marlins, and when they played the Braves even too in '95. So, Trevor Hoffman, game's best closer of all time. He deserves it. Shout out to Vladimir Guerrero. That was kind of one of my surprise picks, and yeah, that's so the groan was towards Chipper Jones as a Mets fan, but I can put the fandom aside and congratulate him on his accomplishment. So
these are my baseball cards coming to life. So like Chipper Jones is like probably one of the greatest card collecting times in between Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez. It was like Chipper Jones, and like been knowing about him since he was like 16 years old, and just knowing he was like the linchpin of the Braves resurgence, and then him getting his first taste, and it's probably gonna come out of the box in spring training as an outfielder, and tears his knee up, and everybody's like, oh my goodness, his career may be over. And it might have been the best thing that ever happened to him, because the Braves moved him to the infield, made him a third baseman, and he became one of the best third basemen of all time defensively. And as a switch hitter with power, he put up some of the best stats ever as a third baseman. So that led a lot to him. That position change led a lot to him, becoming an all-time great, just because third base is it's a very hard position, because you have to combine defense with hitting, and that's a very rare combination to find in a lot of cases. As a Mets fan, you should take pride in helping the man get to the Hall of Fame, because like you said, those playoff series and just those big games, just you remember Chipper Jones always coming through in the clutch against you guys. But yeah, just a story.
No, ever. No. Makes you sick.
Storied career, definitely, for the Atlanta, like you said, his whole career with the Atlanta Braves, from the time he was a prospect to the time he became a Hall of Famer. So big up to him. Vladimir Guerrero, one of my personal favorite guys to watch from the days as a, just young, raw bone kid coming off the island, with the Expos, just throwing people out with that fantastic arm. people just being afraid to run on him, take extra bases. And then, no batting gloves. And it didn't matter if it was from his shoe tops to his eyelids, he could put the bat on it. So Vladimir Guerrero definitely, it's so fun to watch and so many great moments, especially defensively. Jim Thome, as a guy who tried to play first base a little bit. He was one of the guys I looked up to. He was definitely very good defensively, and the power numbers, and in this age of voting for the Hall of Fame, the power numbers are definitely scrutinized more than they've ever been. With the steroid era and the baseball writers holding their biases against guys that they figure were enhanced and got those power numbers with a little bit of aid. So a guy like Jim Thome, they see as doing his naturally. So of course, with his impressive home run numbers, he would definitely be a eventual Hall of Famer, but first ballot, so good for him. And give some love to the closers, Trevor Hoffman, probably the most important position in the game, really, that is definitely overlooked when it comes to Hall of Fame voting. But the most saves in a career. Definitely well earned. A guy who was a starter, had some arm difficulties, and then transitioned into the bullpen, and then became one of the best to ever do it. So these four guys definitely a respectable class for the Hall of Fame, and it'll be real cool to see them all get inducted together, see their plaques, and hear their speeches and hear them thank the people who they it helps them get there. It doesn't do never get here by yourself, and you have to have a whole lot of people who believe in you and give you some opportunities that you maybe are not ready for, but they see that you can handle it, and then you live up to the promise. So this is where it will eventually end up, is in Cooperstown. So Dwayne, at this point, I'll open it up to you, man, for your final thoughts, shout outs, anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to speak on this week on Know the Score.
Okay, final thoughts. I'd just say my final thought is that it's kind of off the subject of sports, but kind of no, it is. It is on the subject of sports. I want to say the XFL, the relaunch of the XFL in 2020. I have some initial reservations about it. The whole faster game. Now halftime. I think you kind of do need some kind of a halftime to get the strategies back on. I also think that the whole players with no criminal past, that's gonna really kind of exclude possibly a lot of the players that may be interested. But I do like the idea of bringing it back, especially, after the Super Bowl kind of gets that football itch going. I like the fact there's no crossovers and it's going to just be, focus on the sport. But I also just think that it's smart of, Vince McMahon to essentially take your time and getting the right personnel, getting the right people to launch this league, and getting the right people to, market this league as well. So that is my final thought. I really hope that, it isn't a money drain, and I hope that there'll be more investors and see how it goes. I have other thoughts, but I'm going to leave it at that.
All right. My final thought will be a little more serious this week. Is just that, Michigan State found itself caught up in this Larry Nassar, U.S. Olympic sexual allegations and things, as he got sentenced to a whole bunch of years. And he probably deserves 1,000 more on top of it. But because he was employed through them for, as one of their main trainers, a lot of focus has turned to Michigan State, and a new light has been shown again on these college programs and how They don't really take these assaults and these reports of abuse and rapes serious when it comes to their athletic programs. And we thought that Baylor would have been a signal that these universities and programs need to tighten it up, but no. And now we've got this thing with Michigan State with all these athletes and their basketball and football programs. And now, people are going back and looking and seeing, oh, well, then this year there was 4 players from the basketball team charged and 9 players from the football team charged. And, and now it's starting to become very, very ugly. So, another little, warning to all these universities and colleges and these athletes and administrators, like, you guys need to take these reports very seriously and do your due diligence, because it's Michigan State this time. It may be your favorite school soon, and you just never know. We're in a brand new climate, and people really need to be careful and really need to be proactive instead of trying to be reactive as far as these allegations, and taking them serious and doing the proper things by these female students. So that's my thought for this week. So for the Libra Icon, I'm Don De Laurenti, and now you know the score.